In internet culture, true crime is considered one of the biggest entertainment topics. At Docky High School, the dedicated students who research this topic are members of an elite duo known as Willa and Etho. This is their documentary. Netflix's 2022 original series Monster: The Jeffrey Dahmer Story is a biographical TV show covering the life of notorious serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer. Dahmer surpassed 1 billion hours viewed in December of 2022, within 60 days of its release. The show is described by some as a disturbing masterpiece, while others simply call it disturbing. Dahmer earned itself 13 Emmy nominations, including a win for Best Actor for the leading man, Evan Peters, Best Supporting Actor for Richard Jenkins, who portrayed Dahmer's father, and Best Supporting Actress for Niecy Nash, who played one of Dahmer's neighbors.
Shirley Hughes, the mother of Dahmer victim Tony Hughes, is quoted stating, "There's a lot of sick people around the world. People winning acting roles from playing killers keeps the obsession going. This makes sick people thrive in the fame," she adds. "It's a shame that people can take our tragedy and make money. The victims never saw a cent. We go through this every day."
Additionally, Rita Isbell, sister of victim Errol Lindsay, spoke out about how she wasn't contacted for permission to be portrayed as a character on the show. "I was never contacted about the show. I feel like Netflix should have asked if we mind or how we felt about making it. They didn't ask me anything, they just did it." While one of the most recent, Dahmer is far from the only example of true crime content that seems to cross some boundaries. Gypsy Rose Blanchard is a victim of horrific child abuse who persuaded her boyfriend to kill her own mother in 2015. In 2019, 3 years into her original 10-year sentence, Hulu released The Act, an 8-episode docu-series covering Gypsy's life story. She's recently described her negative experiences involving the show in her memoir, Released: Conversations on the Eve of Freedom. "I was not consulted or compensated for a show that made actor Joey King a household name."
I feel like I lived it. It was my life. I don't feel like I have to go back and watch it played out.
Nick Antosa, one of the creators of the series, claimed that Gypsy had previously been involved with the show but then had left. However, Gypsy mentions in her book that she, quote, "didn't have any participation in it," end quote. This seems to be a common theme within true crime television shows. Dahmer creator Ryan Murphy also claims to have reached out to at least 20 family members of victims. However, Eric Perry, cousin of Errol Lindsay, tweeted that him and his family only found out about the series when it was released. Other creations like movies, books, podcasts, and video channels have skyrocketed to popularity in recent years. Charts researching podcast statistics have revealed that 34% of American adults that have tuned into podcasts in the last year are frequent listeners of true crime. In addition to the sheer amount of dedicated true crime listeners, women are twice as likely to be interested in true crime than men. This is lined up with some of our personal research. For example, while scrolling through YouTube in the search for true crime content, most of the thumbnails we saw featured female creators. TikTokers and YouTubers eat food or try out a new makeup look as they speak in detail about violent, horrific crimes.
I enjoy it to go to sleep, but I mostly watch it for fun when I'm bored.
I enjoy all of the explanations that these producers in these videos provide with all of their information, their sources. And usually if it's like a murder-based kind of thing, I specifically like the interviewers while they're talking to the person who commits these crimes and their views on the things that they did.
I don't really have moral qualms with it. I maybe a few, but like I think my bigger thing is like I'm more worried about the safety of the people doing it, like getting themselves involved with something that, you know, it's pretty risky behavior. Just kind of intervening where the police are getting involved and stuff like that. I'm not opposed to it being done morally. I do think it could complicate some actual cases, like if they get in the way or corrupt evidence and things like that. So I do think there are some moral considerations, but generally, I don't personally have a ton of moral problems with it. More concerned about the safety.
There are great examples and there are terrible examples, and
What I like about
like true crime is like I like hearing about like the murders and like how they get killed, like where they find their deceased bodies.
Well, I don't think it's like bad at all to like talk about like real crimes, you know? 'Cause these are real people's stories that like oftentimes ought to be like shared, you know? They shouldn't be forgotten. But then it's another thing when like telling these stories becomes like it's another thing to turn those stories into products, you know?
Keeping this new perspective in mind, we went back to further research why true crime is so popular, especially with women, and what positive effects could come from its consumption. Part of the appeal might be the educational aspect. Some true crime podcasts or YouTubers use their platform to spread awareness about ongoing cases or help encourage people to beware of their surroundings and possible dangers. Some articles suggest that women turn to true crime to learn about how to identify and avoid potential killers, or how to defend themselves in dangerous situations. Others are fascinated by how killers' minds work, questioning their motives or methods for their crimes. True crime narratives can detail the complexity of human behavior and psychology, which is a fascinating topic for some people. True crime stories can also highlight victim advocacy and the empowerment of survivors. Psychiatrist Dr. Howard Foreman says, by the time you get to adulthood, women are able to empathize to a greater degree than men, on average. That may lead to true crime being more interesting to women than men, simply because if you empathize more with the victim, it may be more relevant to you and more gripping. Fictional shows that are based in reality can still be appealing to wider audiences. People love shows like Law & Order: Special Victims Unit, even though it's a show focused often on very violent and horrific crimes. The 25-season-long show is often praised for its characters and actors, particularly Mariska Hargitay as Olivia Benson. This actress's portrayal of a New York City cop becoming captain of her unit is riveting for audiences, mainly due to her extremely empathetic and compassionate nature towards victims. However, SVU has also been criticized in the past for its inaccurate portrayal of police, particularly of the NYPD.
Detectives valorised on TV, with one saying, Law & Order SVU gave me the false impression that this squad cared deeply about victims and their jobs, and another saying, if I had $1 for every time I heard, this can't be true, Olivia Benson would never let this happen, I would have enough to cover my hospital bills and therapy for my trauma. And you should know.
Regardless of the writers' or creators' intentions, it's undeniable that the show has had some kind of negative impact. But it's also impossible to say that shows like SVU have never helped real people or had any kind of positive impact. For a long time, true crime has and will likely remain a staple of pop culture. It's important to be aware of what you consume online, especially when it involves true stories and real people. Peter E. Scott sums up our point perfectly.
True crime, especially because of the content, what you're talking about, it's going to cause controversy, and it's going to be an area where people are not going to like. It's not like a rom-com. It's not like just something easy and light. It's dealing with material that is difficult, that can feel personal, and that can be very powerful. And at its best, it can make us think differently about society, about ourselves and others. And at worst, it can perpetuate stereotypes and play into, long-held beliefs that society has that aren't necessarily true. So there are plenty of benefits and detractions to the genre, just like any other genre you might be interested in.